Eric Sheridan from Rust Belt Basketball Coaches Network. I hope you're having a great week. We just received a really good question from a coach from the great state of Indiana. And his question was, through one of your past videos, you had made reference to isolating players in certain scenarios. How did you do it? And what were your points of emphasis? Well, we'll get into the points of emphasis first. We wanted to go directly at the opposition's point guard if they were a team who really only had one legitimate ball handler. And we felt like if we could get him on the bench, then we could press or extend our defense and make other players handle the ball. That would be advantageous to us. Or if they had a player who was just an absolute lights out shooter, then we would go right at them and try to get him on the bench in a multitude of different ways. And some of those ways we'll go over today. One is the high flex. And we stole this from Coach Marty Johnson when he was coaching at East Noble. And you can run your standard flex, or you can run the version which we called shuffle versus teams who switched, which is just basically flex without a down screen. So there's a multitude of ways to enter into the flex. We won't get into entries, just kind of the continuity of the offense itself. So on that first guard to guard pass, you've got what's called the corner rub in the flex offense, where you've got a screen here and we're looking for that cutter. And then if we're running a flex where we down screen here, and then obviously you've got your slip option and then your pop out option. And then this pattern continues. And if you're utilizing a flex where you're not setting the down screen due to switching, you've got your guard to guard pass here, and here comes your corner rub, or what I think is commonly or modern terminology would be the flex cut. And there's your flex cut. And the passer, or the person who passed the ball guard to guard, flares, and the person who executed the corner rub screen pops up as his man will help on that cut against a well-trained man-to-man defensive team. So there's another guard-to-guard pass. There's your shape up. There's your corner rub. There's your flare. And there's your pop-up. So how we got isolations out of this was primarily one of two ways. No matter if we were utilizing shuffle, which was the flex without the down screen, or traditional flex with the down screen. And again, we utilized the version of flex according to how the opposition defended. If they switched, we'd run shuffle. If they did not switch, we would run standard flex. And we ran our version of flex high up on the foul line as either a delay at the end of quarters or in an attempt to isolate our player or players versus A, their point guard, or B, their best shooter. So in this scenario, we'll say, okay, the first time the person who's being defended by their point guard comes off the corner rub, he's going to post up, and for the remainder of that possession, we're going to be in a 4-out, 1-in. So let's say that person is our two-man, and he's being guarded by the opposition's point guard or best shooter. And he passes guard to guard. Here's your corner rub. And let's say we're running shuffle. He's going to fade it. There's your pop. Guard to guard. Corner rub. Flare. Pop to the pro spot. Guard to guard. And now through offensive chatter, the 5 players, or I should say 4 of the other players, including 2, so all 5 players are now going to be talking about getting 2 into the post where he's going to utilize a 4-out 1-in to isolate himself versus the opposition's guard, best guard, let's say. So here's your corner rub. Now here he can backdoor it, he can curl it, but he's going to find a way into the block. There's your flare or fade. Here comes your pop. And now from this scenario, 2 is going to run what we call the post block. Block to block, elbow to elbow, nail hole. So this entire block or square, if you will. And he's going to follow the ball. So here he's coming up here. We're looking to hit him here. And in that scenario, if he catches the ball in what we call the cylinder being the lane line extended, the other 5 players move into this formation and they are clearing out now. And 2 has a pseudo 4 low with the ball. If the ball is swung, let's say a diagonal pass. So X1's here in the nail hole area, and we burn the ball diagonally. Here comes 2. And the other players are positioning themselves now. We got a nice ball side triangle here. We really want to work this ball side triangle. On the weak side of the floor, we've got the best shooter of these 2 players on the weak side utilizing what we call a horizontal stretch. So 4 is going to pin in X3, and 4 is going to stay in between X3 and 3. So they're going to move in this fashion on the weak side as 2's working his tail off here on the block. So if 1 can't hit him and X5 is down here in this area helping, maybe he even has a hand in the ball line, we'll burn the ball to 5. If 2 can ride his man up the lane line, we'll look for that high-low. If X4 sees that X3 isn't committing fully, but X4 goes in and helps, it's an automatic. 4 to the high post, 5 spreads to create room for this, and now we're going high-low. Or a bounce pass side this way. 1 would lower his body to give 4 more room to operate. If X1 comes in here and gets a hand in the ball line or stunts at the ball line, we're burning the ball here. Now you've got your horizontal stretch, or what we call circling away on the weak side, and you're going to utilize this ball side triangle. If the ball is burnt on a horizontal stretch or a skip, most times we would just want to find a way to get to this side of the floor. Now, that's not to say we would never have a player screen for him to get to the block, but we'd utilize that or those kind of actions out of either a traditional flex, or I should say a traditional high flex, or a shuffle versus teams who switched. And we had some of the biggest upsets of the teams I coached in my career, utilizing this type of action to get either a point guard or a tremendous off the hook type of shooter on the bench and keep him on the bench as much as possible. Another avenue we used was what Coach Punter used at Valparaiso. Let's get 5 down in here. And again, they had 1,000,007 sets that they used to enter the ball and to get into this action. And we're not going to go over entries in this video. Again, just the basic concepts of isolating players. So the players know who they want to isolate. And the important thing here is making sure this is a player who can shoot the ball from outside of the 3-point line. I think it's vital that this is a good player, or I should say a player who can shoot the ball. If not, a player who's really good at driving the basketball and picking up fouls himself. So every time the player who we want to isolate passes the ball, he's going to receive a back screen. So let's say we're wanting to isolate our one man versus their point guard, and the ball swung here. And then these guys didn't necessarily screen away too much because that action does get switched, but they would rotate spots. They would just kind of bump and fill. And if you've never seen Valparaiso High School play, or primarily, and nothing against Valparaiso's current coach or past coaches, but Coach Punter's teams were so fundamentally sound. I mean, it was a pain in the neck to coach against, but outside of that, it was one of those scenarios where you learned something every time you saw them play. Just ultra fundamental. So no matter one passes, whether it's a horizontal stretch or a forward to guard, whatever, here comes your pick the passer action. So that screen's typically going to take place about here. And one's going to shape up. And now we've got him or her on the block. And from here, one would ride the post box. And ball's burnt. If it's guard to guard, he's going nail hole. And they did primarily the same thing. I think there were times where they actually kind of stacked if the ball, or when the ball's entered to the middle or in the cylinder, to create a mismatch, or to create a hopefully versus a mismatch, but also create that isolation. If the ball was burnt guard to forward, whether it's strong side pro spot or weak side pro spot, then one is cutting here. So that's how Coach Punter did it at Valpo, and just had a tremendous amount of success executing that. Coach Dick Bennett and Tony Bennett and everybody who's from Indiana knows Coach Bobby Knight, God rest his soul, was just fantastic at teaching triangle. And people sometimes get confused and think we're talking about Tex Winter's triangle, and we're not. We're talking about Coach Knight's triangle, or what Coach Dick Bennett called green in his blocker mover system. Not sure what Tony Bennett calls it, but you can align in two types of ways. You can align in the traditional triangle, or you can align the way Coach Bennett at Virginia, UVA, Coach Tony Bennett aligns, and they align in this inverted triangle. And again, you've got two options with your guards. You can dribble enter the thing to the wing, and one rule, if you're dribble entering, would be the opposite guard has to occupy what we call the diagonal, or what Coach Knight or Coach Bennett called the diagonal rule, where they're always diagonal to the ball. That way, if you burn the ball here, you've got a great angle to feed the low post. So you want to make sure you've got the player who you want isolated in this triangle. And no matter if it's a traditional triangle or inverted triangle, and let's say we want to isolate 5. They've got an absolute stud post player, and our post player is pretty crafty and maybe smaller and is really fundamental, and he's a kid we can get to the short corners for isolations. Then we would want to screen for him as much as possible. So we'd have 5 shaping up, we'd have 4 screening, and then 2 screening the screener here. For example, it's not a pattern. We don't want this to be a pattern. But 5 can stop here at the block. He always wants to stop under the rim first. If his man got hung on that first screen, we'll take that shot fake and layup every time. If not, he's going to the short corner here. And the ball goes to him. And 4 is going to lift. 2 is going to go to the opposite elbow. 3 is not going to be in the dead corner, but he's going to be in the corner area. We want to give him room to be able to catch the thing and drive it baseline without stepping out of bounds. So 5 is going to Sigma pivot, shot fake, but we want him to get in this area, shot fake, do whatever he has to do to either score or pick up a foul on the defender whom we're isolating. If 5 burns the ball, opposite. Then here comes your screen. And here comes your other screen. And again, it's a multitude of actions you can utilize. The ball's passed. We'd want 5 to screen here. So he throws it here. Then let's say 5 can back screen 4. And now 5's going to pop it. And whenever the ball comes to the top, or what we call the pro spots, both of the guards who Coach Knight called feeders lift just a little bit. And there's your ISO. If he can shot fake and get in this area, and if he does shot fake and get in this area, 2's following directly behind him. Directly behind him. If 5 gets it in the short corner, the reason we had 2 move to this area was primarily we wanted 4 here, but whoever, you never know who's going to be there in a pure motion offense. When 5 gets it, shot fakes, and when he gets a shot up, we want 2 going hard to the glass. I mean, touching the baseline with his inside foot, and then basically blocking his man out. 4's back on defense. 1's back on defense. And then 3's going to the middle, dead middle, sprinting middle to help form that offensive rebounding triangle. So again, this isn't a pattern in this triangle. It's kids. The kids who I coached really like this because it allows the kids to be really creative, and it really exacerbates their need for offensive chatter. And quite honestly, when we started enforcing offensive chatter, whenever I would take a new job, this is what we did in the summers to make them learn how to talk to each other effectively. Because if you follow our stuff, when we talk about offensive chatter, we don't want junk mail. We want very specific and detailed and concise information being distributed amongst the 5 players on the floor. So 1 hits 2, 4 could screen for 5. And of course, we're going to take this. If they switch that, we're going to look right here. We'll take that layup for sure. So we're not saying that the person we're isolating is the only person who can shoot the basketball, but we are making an emphasis of getting that person the ball as much as possible. We really like this down screen, this high down screen out of this action with a curl or a slip. We like that action a lot. 5 passes it here, and we like this down screen action again a lot. And there's 5 just leg whipping his man, riding him up as high as he can because he's going to jump high side there, and getting that left hand towards the basket for that pass right there. And what's even better is if he gets it, and this kid's huge, which some of the places I coached, we had to go against a lot of very skilled big men who went on to play in the Big Ten or wherever, and we get that shot fake and muster up a shot, get to the foul line. And then once this player picks up his second foul in the first half, or hopefully Our goal was picking up the second foul late first quarter or early second quarter. Now that puts the other team in a position where if this kid can play, the person they put on him might be not able to guard him here, and he might not be able to guard him here. And so that puts this player in a really neat position to be able to score the basketball. And that player whom has been subbed out, that's our goal. That's our goal. If the opposition doesn't sub him out and leaves him in, but puts him on a different player, then that's easy. So let's say they stick him on our 3. Okay. So there's a guard-to-guard pass. Here comes 5. Screening that player, and now we've got 3 in the triangle. Guard-to-guard. There's a nice screening action for him. And when the ball went here to the player whom we're isolating, and again, we just talked about this, we stole this from Coach Marty Johnson at East Noble, and Bob Punter, again, was outstanding at it. Everyone floated towards the baseline, and here's your pseudo 4-low, or 1-4-low, if you will. Another thing to keep in mind through your scouting and game planning, that the triangle motion alignment is really good at providing you is if they have a player who goal sucks, that's what we called it back in the 80s. But, a player who once your team shoots, he's prone to take off and try to get a cheap basket. Stick him in the triangle. Put that player in the triangle and make him guard all these things, all this action, all the screening and cutting action, and he's not going to be able to leak out and score. If you keep that from happening, and that takes 8 points per se off of their game average, and those 8 points you're taking away from them could turn out to be a big deal at the end of the basketball game, in the fourth quarter. Another type of action we utilized when we had really good guards, or again, a mismatch. If I had a 4 or a 5 who could put the thing on the floor and was ambidextrous and could use, dribble just as well with his left as he did with his right, and he could play, just being a basketball player, we would put him out here. So your traditional weave where 4 and 5 have their heels on the baseline. And you could do this a certain amount of what we called sweeps, and I think they're called DHOs now, dribble handoffs. But one dribbles it over, and there's your sweep. And 2's looking to come off of this dribble handoff or sweep and get in there as deep as he can. And if 4 lifts or 5 lifts, that's a baseline bounce pass for a lay-in. 2 gets it, and he gets cut off. He's going to take the thing directly at X3. He's shaping X3 up. Here's your sweep. And you can do this one of 2 ways. A certain amount of sweeps, and then that player finds a way to get here, and everybody else flattens out. Or the first or second or third time the player whom we're isolating gets the ball off of a sweep, we go right into 1-4-low. So if 3 is the person who we want in this mismatch, and we've said, okay, either it's the first time you get it or a certain amount of sweeps, the other players on the perimeter filter down to the baseline, and here's our ISO. And if 3, we want 3 getting a shot. We want him to get a straight line drive, bust the hip of X3 or X4 if they're switching. And we want him to get in here for a shot because 5 and 4 have superior offensive rebounding positioning now. And a lot of people say, what do you mean? X4 and X5 are going to be above them. And that's exactly what I mean, because as soon as 3 gets a foot in the paint, 4 and 5 are in essence going to box their men out, coming off the baseline and sticking them. So this shot is not going to be a brick if this is a really good player. 4 and 5 now are in superior offensive rebounding positioning. And that's not to say that we would have, let's say it's 4. Just get the inbound pass. And when I was Coach Sirk's assistant at Oak Hill High School, Coach Sirk was so good at teaching 1-4 low and all the different options out of a 1-4 low or a dribble weave. And I took so many notes from him. Such valuable information that he had lended during my time with him. And Four's job is to break his man down and get in here. It's the same thing now. 3 and 2 got their heels on the baseline. 4 gets a foot in the paint, and 5 and 4's inside leg are coming in, and up, and they are tattooing their men in and up, forcing them up the lane line, preparing to rebound that basketball. Another way we isolated players was Coach Dick Bennett's end of quarter set that he utilized when he was a high school coach. And he showed this at a clinic that one of the really, really good guys and great basketball coaches from the state of Indiana, Scotty Hudson, who's at Wapahani now. And Scott Hudson was one of my mentors when I was coaching in Indiana. And he showed this to me back in the mid 90s. But the person who coach wanted isolated would start on a block, and the player who the biggest player, or I should say the biggest and most skilled big they had, would start on the strong side block. So let's say the ball goes to the right. If the ball went to the left, then these two are just simply switching positions. But the ball goes to the right, one is going to dribble push 4 through, and here comes 2 off of 5's screen. And 2 gets it. That's not to say he can't curl this. He certainly could. We're wanting to get him the ball. We want to play 2-man basketball, or maybe I should say 3-man basketball. And 2 is the person whom we are isolating. So that's not to say 2 could curl it. And 1 hits 2 or 5. But if 2 gets it here on the wing, he makes a vertical cut to the ball. 1 is going to move to the opposite pro spot in about 3 steps higher. 5 is going to chase 2 and set either a Patino ball screen with his behind facing the baseline or a standard ball screen. And 4 and 3 are going to stretch the floor horizontally. So 2 and 5 are going to play, Stockton Malone 2-man basketball here. And if 2 goes baseline, 5's cutting right down the middle, 3 to the mid corner, and 4 to the weak side block. And then 1 is always going to follow ball side. Ball goes out to 1 per se. And again, this is usually used in short clock scenarios. Not to say that you couldn't use it just as a little set to get an ISO. But we got 5, we got 3 coming through, we got 1 burning the ball across the court. 5 finds a way to screen for 2. 4's clearing out to the weak side. We hit 2. We stretch the 1. And it's the same thing. And it's a repetitive action that's not quite a stringent pattern. And that's one of the things I really liked about it. These three people here have a tremendous amount of offensive chatter, a tremendous amount of offensive chatter. Meaning, if X4 sinks all the way in here, then heck yeah, we're sending 4 here, and we're going to work like heck to get a high-low. Or 4 could take a shot fake on this closeout and maneuver around X4. So we're still playing basketball. If X3, this is X3, if X3 comes in here and commits, 4 puts his body wide in between X3 and 3, and 4 is going to put his hands up as if he's a referee in a football game signaling a field goal. And yeah, heck yeah, 2's going to burn that ball here for a baseline drive or a quick post feed to 4. So that's another creative way to isolate a player or players that a lot of players or coaches don't utilize, at least in the areas modern basketball, I should say. I get to watch a heck of a lot of basketball during the season now that I'm not coaching, and I just don't see a whole lot of this stuff being utilized. But I'm sure I'll get an email, and I hope I do. I hope I get an email that chastises me and tells me I'm wrong. I hope people are doing this. Another great way is what Coach Knight called pairs, and it's a 3 out, 2 under. And on one side of the floor, you want a big, and again, at Coach Knight's rules, where a big man never goes out further than his shooting range. So, high school, I had an awful lot of 5 men who could play out here. So let's go ahead and put 5 here. And then on the other side, you want a guard down, but not down on the blocks. You want him up higher. And your big or your secondary big or whoever you've got a forward per se, whatever. So it's all contingent. 1 crosses the midline. Let's say it says he goes left. 5's going to screen down. Here comes 2. And again, we're trying to find the mismatch here with 2. He can curl this thing. He can fade it. Everything we teach, but we're trying to get the ball to 2. 2 makes a vertical cut towards the ball. And it's an automatic. Now, Coach Knight did not set screens on the ball. Coach Jim Cruz did when he utilized pairs. If you're into ball screening, go ahead and come up and set that ball screen. If not, you're trying to create a driving avenue. So as 2's coming off this, again, this isn't a jump. We're not necessarily wanting jump shots. We're wanting 2 to get his man in foul trouble. We're looking for him to punch this thing hard, looking to score. 5, heels on the baseline. 3 is the secondary closest man to the rim, heels on the baseline. 4 is going to float down the mid corner. And 1 always flares or fades away from 2. If X1 dives in there and digs at the ball, now we've got a quick pitch to 1 who can put it on the deck and go, created by 2's penetration. A lot of coaches have players stay on one side of the court in their pairs. Coach Knight did not. Coach Bennett did not. I did, just for the sake of simplicity. I did have a really mature team in 2013. You know what I mean by that was they'd played together ever since they were in grade school and were just a more mature brand of high school kid. And I could let them move across the sides of the floor and still utilize this pairs action. If not, we just kept our players on one side of the floor. So if the ball is over here, let's say 4 or 3 back screens for 4 to enter into this thing, 1's going to fade over. Again, we're still trying to isolate 2. Here comes 5. Back screening 2. Fade it, curl it, straight cut it, pocket cut it. But we want to get that ball to 2. If the ball's ping-ponged to 1, if X1 jumps in here, which a well-coached man-to-man team will do that. As soon as X1 moves in to help, One's going to move to the ball. And now this action gets really neat because these two players are already in movement. And you get that high curling action with a pop. And on that pass to the wing, we're going to circle away and stretch the floor horizontally on the weak side. Now we're in Valhalla. This is utopia for us. Now we've got two burying his man on the blocks. And yes, we did do a lot of work with our post players on the blocks. One of the best games, or well coached, I should say, games I've seen in an awful long time was from a powerhouse here in Ohio, Jackson Center High School. And they do such a great job of one, offensive chatter, and two, isolating players on the blocks. So let's say four's the player we want to isolate on the block. And again, there's a million ways to enter into this. I'm not going over entries now, just the basic principles. So the ball goes guard to forward. The player who we are isolating is going to receive a screen by the lowest player on the floor. And we are looking for this action here. We're looking for this action going to the rim. If they cheat it, if X4 jumps in here, we're going to fade that and burn it right back to him. And in that scenario, here we go. You've got your pseudo 4 low for your isolation. If he makes the wheel cut as soon as 3 and 5 have 2 men in a row, pick the picker, and here comes this player, and this player's shooting up here into the gap for a drive, looking to score or kick the ball to 3, or if he shoots it, 3, inside foot hits the baseline, block your own man out, position yourself for the offensive rebound. Crash, back, back. So it could be the same scenario if, let's say, the ball goes to the wing, and we're going after 3. 1 threw the ball to 2. There we go. And 3's over here. Lowest man on the floor, screen. So this kid's going to be hugging the midline against a well-coached man-to-man team. And there's your block-to-block screen. Pick the picker. Ball goes here. Fade it. Pop. Burn the ball. Burn the ball. 3's on the block. He can back screen whoever he wants. Whomever he wants. So he goes up here and he back screens 1. Pop it. Hit. Filter down, and there is, and now this isn't, he's not standing obviously with the ball on his hip. Once he catches that thing, he's Sigma pivoting, or if he had to reach for the thing with his inside pivot foot, he's facing up and he's looking to go. He's going to bust the hip of X3, and these people are in movement to their 1-4 low positions. So I hope that gives you some ideas. I know there's a billion ways to do it. And if you watch this video and you have an alternative way, please send it to me. Derek, DEREK, at myrustbeltbasketball.com. Derek at myrustbeltbasketball.com. Please email me and give me some more ammunition for this stuff, because I believe this has a strong part of being a really successful high school basketball coach. If you can get their best player out of the game, and then once they sub, Now you start picking on their second best player or their best ball handler or second best ball handler. And you manage the game kind of like how a baseball coach manages the game. Just in that regard, I think you'll find two things. One, the amount of offensive chatter your kids utilize skyrockets. And that's really fun to coach and really fun to witness. And two, your players, not only on ball fundamental skills seem to get better because they want to be that guy who can make a move off the dribble in an isolated format, or off the block in an isolated format. And lastly, your offensive rebounding numbers really get good because of this alignment in training players. Inside foot on the baseline, outside foot reach steps, and you just waylay your man, and now you've put yourself in a really good position to collect an offensive rebound and score or get to the foul line, or preferably both. Hey, my name's Derek Sheridan from Rust Belt Basketball Coaches Network. Give us a call if you'd like to subscribe to our free weekly newsletter named In Ted's Honor, where we honor the late, great Kansas high school basketball coach, Ted Anderson. Shoot an email to me, Derek at myrustbeltbasketballcoaches.com, and we will put you on the list. It's free, and the only time you will receive an email from us is when we send out the newsletter. You are not going to get email bombed. Have a great 4th of July. Stay safe, and I hope after the 4th of July, everybody has 10 fingers and 10 toes, a functional nose, and both of their ears. So be safe with the firecrackers, and always remember, put your pet somewhere where there's going to be blockage to the noise. You know, our pets hate the 4th of July because of the noise. Put them somewhere where they're not going to get anxious and upset. Put them somewhere where they're going to have, um, so to speak, quiet time or time out. Hey, God bless. Send me your stuff, folks. We're always looking for stuff for our newsletter to post. And again, if you've got some better or uh, ways that you teach isolation basketball, I would love to see it. And if you send it to me, my God, you will get the credit. Absolutely, you will get the credit. So make sure you tell me where you coach and what your school's name is. God bless, folks.